He's Henry Gomez, an ad agency strategist with over 26 years of experience and now the owner of a Silver Can Lion.
And he's Howard Eibach, a former copywriter and creative director and the author of 2 books on the creative brief. And together we're the Brief Brothers. And we talk about creative briefs, briefing, and advertising. Well, Howard, we're back. And as promised, this is the second episode about Cannes, but this time not so personal to me, but more to talk about some of the work that I saw and admired at Cannes. And of course, there's no way that we could go over all of the stuff that won, but what I've done is I've curated 4 Cannes case studies that we can roll and talk about a little bit what we liked, didn't like, if we think they're interesting, etc. So anything you want to say before we get started with the first one?
Well, I guess the thing I would add is that Cannes comes with a lot, shall we say, a big can of worms, which we all know. I mean, it is a huge target for both adulation and attacks. So we have to acknowledge that up front. And it was interesting that while you were gone, enjoying yourself over there, I was enjoying some of the riffing and ripping and parroting and fun making on LinkedIn in particular, that some of people that we know, like George Tannenbaum and Tom Goodwin and others were having at the expense of Cannes. And I get it, because a lot of the awards can be for social causes that are I wouldn't say they're airsats, they're real clients. They might be public service announcements, they might be pro bono, but we've had many discussions, or at least a couple of discussions about, are we doing this for real products? So one of the things that I like about what you've chosen here is that all of these are real products. They're actual things you go to the store and buy, or things that you can support. So with that, let's take a look at the first spot. Tell us what it's going to be.
So this spot is called Superhuman. It was created by Channel 4. I believe it's an in-house agency called 4 Creative London and Somesuch London together. And this, I'm bringing it to the table because it won the Grand Prix in film. And so we'll roll it now. It's a 3-minute film, and we'll come back and talk about it on the other side.
What's next for Kadina Cox? She's already under huge pressure.
Now she's set her sights on Tokyo.
She'll do it again.
So you wanna be a boxer in a golden ring? Can you punch like a southbound freight train? Tell me just one thing. Can you move in a world like a hummingbird's wing if you need to? Ooh, that's fast. Can you bob, can you weave, can you fake and deceive when you need to? Or you might as well quit if you haven't got it. Wanna be the champ. There's a golden boy inside you, not a punched out tramp. If you listen and you learn, there's an honor you can
This year's Paralympics have been postponed.
When you do see the crown, you're a king, not a clown, a contender.
Well, you might as well quit.
haven't got it,
but you might as well quit.
if you haven't got it, in the range show something if you haven't got it. We have the swing joke, and we'll go to haven't got it. Get quite swift if you haven't got it. Get the drift. Put him in the range show, chicken in the pot. Let me have a wing joke, pour him in the pot. The chicken will grow. Let's go. Might as well if you haven't got it.
Okay, Howard. So what do you think?
This is really moving. You know, as a short film about the Paralympics, it was a powerful look at what these athletes have to endure to prepare themselves for this event. I have a somewhat of a personal connection to this. My late younger brother was a special Olympian. He never went to the major Olympics that this is touting. And there is a difference between the Special Olympics and the Paralympics, but it is part and parcel of recognizing that everyone has the ability to compete and do well in a particular activity. So that connected with me personally. The other thing I love is the music was perfectly chosen. It kept the spirit going about you don't give up, keep going. You know, you can't quit. It was fun watching a little bit of these athletes' kids who were a little, at least it appeared that they were a little upset that mom or dad wasn't available to take care of their needs. And they expressed that in kind of fun ways. I love the interjection of what might appear to be unexpected and inappropriate clips from other sources, but it made perfect sense. So I think the whole thing came together really, really well. The editing is superb. I can see why this, won the Grand Prix. It's a great job.
So I echo those sentiments. I think for me, one, it's not a product, but it is it's something that this channel 4 in Great Britain airs, is the Paralympics. So this is promotion for their programming. So in that sense, I believe it's advertising, and this is a trailer for their Paralympic coverage. You mentioned the music. I mean, the music is phenomenal. I mean, every time I watch it, like I'm singing that song in my head.
Mhm.
Well, you might as well quit if you haven't got it. And it's really catchy and fun. And, they could have gone a very serious route, showing the dedication of these athletes, which they do. They show it, but they show it in a lighthearted way. And, even the thing that you mentioned about there's that scene where the daughter kind of shuts the phone because the dad is training. It's basically saying that for these athletes, this is just as important as for an Olympic athlete. So there's that message there. There's also the story of these athletes that when their Paralympics got postponed, like the Olympics did, it's a huge disappointment for them. And so the filmmaking is amazing. You mentioned the bringing of different sources of video that kind of also, there's kind of a fantasy element to some of it, like the woman is dreaming and it's not all just one genre. Like all of this is coming together, but it works somehow. It works as a film. And to me, the most important thing, and the thing that made me laugh out loud, was this is an amazing piece of visual and audio communication. But to me, my favorite part was a piece of copy. And that was that little card at the end that says, to be a Paralympic athlete, there must be something wrong with you. I thought that was a brilliant line.
Yes.
That flashed up on the screen for Havas, but just a line. We talk about, the visual versus the copy. And I think that is a great, kind of succinct, and these characters were quirky, right? Like they weren't just unidimensional athletes. They had personality and they were quirky, and we could see the ups and downs of the training. And so a Grand Prix, there was a couple of other spots that could have been the Grand Prix in my opinion. I have no problem with this winning the Grand Prix. I really enjoyed it. And as entertainment, again, we talked, since we were talking with Paul Feldwick about
Fame.
advertising as entertainment and fame generating. I think that this does that for the Paralympics.
And let me just add one more thing, because I've seen a lot of disparagement on some social media about, oh, it's advertising is about storytelling. This is the epitome. This is the highest bar of telling a great story. And that's what makes it fun and entertaining and engaging. If you don't know how to tell a story, you're not going to be a good filmmaker, period.
And it's a 3-minute film. And at no
Yeah.
point do you find yourself looking at
No.
your watch and you know, you want to see like where's the payoff. And that's why to me that payoff, it's kind of like it's a little change of pace. You know, to be a Paralympian, there has to be something wrong with you, and
Right.
and it makes you laugh, and it shows that these people do have sense of humor. You know, this isn't just about the stoic athlete, you know.
Yeah. So what's next on our list?
So this one is called Detectives, and it was submitted by an agency called O Positive in Santa Monica, and this is for Apple. And though I don't like to use Apple as an example in my teaching, I think if we're talking about the great advertising in the world, we can't deny the fact that Apple puts out some of the great advertising in this world. And so this spot is for the iPhone 13 Pro model, which is basically the highest end iPhone you can get right now. And it's part of a campaign that they've had now for a couple of years called Hollywood in Your Pocket. So let's take a look.
Can I ask you a question? Am I out of focus?
You're fine.
Yeah, but I mean, look at me, I'm all blurry.
Well, you're supporting cast.
What?
The camera focuses on the most important character, which is me.
Well, what if my character had a big reveal?
Like what?
Like maybe I'm the killer.
Are you?
Yeah. No. Could have been. Could have been the killer.
So Howard, what do you think?
My thoughts. Well, I've always thought about Apple as a great example of reviving the art and the technique of a product demonstration. It's to some extent, it's a lost art. Before we hit the record button, Henry, you and I were talking about, or at least I asked the question, I can't put my finger on another brand that is even close to being top of mind that even does a product demonstration, much less does it well. I pointed to the spot that was created for the introduction of the AirPods some years ago, where the young black kid is walking down the street with his AirPods, and all of a sudden he's walking up the side of the wall and on the ceiling, straight out of a Gene Kelly movie, right, from the 1950s, to demonstrate that the AirPods aren't going to fall out of your ears. I mean, it's a fun, engaging spot, but it's also a demonstration of how the product works. Well, here we have an example of a couple of cops straight out of a cop procedural, sitting in the car on a stakeout. Very simple. Couldn't have been a simpler scene created to tell this story. And as I was mentioning before, it looks like it could possibly have been a single take up until the cut to the product itself. The acting is superb and completely understated. And all of a sudden there's a little rack focus to demonstrate what this new phone can do. That's all it is. But it's done to perfection. And if you're not paying attention to what's going on, you're going to miss it. So you have to really be paying attention. And to me, it says, I want to see this again. I want to see this again and again and again, because there's, first of all, the black guy he's in his character, and his partner, who is the foil, who's the out of focus fuzzy guy, is just his body language is perfect. I don't know where they found these guys, but I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, so I viewed this for the first time on the in the basement at Cannes. They have like basically these computers set up with headphones, and you could look at the work that has been shortlisted. So before I knew that this was going to win, and this won a gold in the film category. Before actually, let me back up real quick. It won. Yeah, it was in the consumer goods segment. It won a gold, and so before I even knew that it had won, it was on the short list. I saw it and I noted it as one of the ones that I wanted to bring back and show because it was so great. You mentioned the acting, they're so good. Like the guy is like he's the dupe, right? Like the white guy, and the black guy's so handsome, and he's the main actor. He's so confident, and it doesn't look like overacting. Like it looks like these guys could really do and even just the scene, like the setup of, you immediately know where you are, right? You immediately know these two cops.
The car gives it away.
Yeah, two cops on a stakeout. They're bored. They're waiting for something to happen. It's the typical, it's the cliche scene of the cops. They're waiting. They're having like an inane conversation while they're waiting. We could almost like envision the next scene, like where the bad guy comes out of the house that they're staking out or whatever, and they got to, they're looking through the binoculars. Just really, really well done. Again, showing the nature of the product and the benefit that they want to highlight. I really enjoyed it, and it also speaks to a consumer truth. My stepson is a film student. He's an editor. He wants to get into this business on that side. And the other day, my wife and I, who are sailors, avid sailors, and we have this idea of like starting a YouTube channel where we kind of document our sailing adventures. We were going on a trip, and my wife asked him about, which is the best camera that we should have for video, and he's like, listen, the phone you carry in your pocket is the best piece of equipment you own. And she's got like an 11, right? So this is the 13 Pro, and they just get better every time. And like I said, this is part of Hollywood, and the benefit of this is you're carrying around a camera that has that cinematographical like quality that really high resolution with all these like bells and whistles. So I just I knew I loved this one from the first viewing. And you're right, you keep watching it and you're amazed at like how believable these two guys are.
Yeah, you've made an interesting point that you don't like to come back to Apple because it sets such a high bar, but I think that's a reason all by itself to keep coming back to Apple. And we can learn what they're, about great advertising, about great thinking, about great strategy, just from what they do. So that was a great choice. What's your next one?
Yeah, let me go real quick. I think this one is for Adidas, or Adidas, as you rightly point out, is the way the Germans say it, because it's named after Adi Dassler, the founder. This is from an agency. This is from Havas, Middle East, Dubai. It was the Grand Prix winner for outdoor in the culture and context and cultural insight category. And so this is a short case video that shows not only the out-of-home execution, but everything that went into it. And let's roll it.
When I was growing up, I never saw women that looked like me wearing the hijab, and I feel like that hindered my ability to kind of dream.
حول حوض للسباحة معلق على شكل لوحة إعلانية في
The first ever liquid billboard.
아디다스는 최근 세계 최초로 두바이 해변에 액체 광고판을 선보였습니다.
Swimming is for everyone, like Billboard type setup and Adidas there.
When I look around and I look at everyone, I feel that we are all the same in the water.
Okay, Howard, out of home for Adidas.
This one really rocked me back in my chair. It's a fascinating exploration, and they call this a cultural insight. So I learned a lot just by reading the information in it and watching this story unfold. And it's a fascinating discovery. I mean, I've traveled a fair amount in my life, and have been exposed to a lot of different cultures and a lot of different thinking. But to think about the way women feel about how they feel about themselves when they go swimming was a revelation to me, especially, I mean, not so much among Middle Eastern women. I understand that there's a kind of a built-in modesty in their culture, either personal or enforced by some of the religious practices, which I understand and respect. But the way Adidas used this insight to empower women by creating these, I think you said there were about 9 of them around the world, to allow people to just jump in the water and swim around and feel comfortable in their own, in their own bodies, to get comfortable swimming, I think was amazing. And I think they did a great job of playing out this story. I was impressed.
Yeah, so this is an example of a great case video where the idea is explained from the insight through to the execution, and that the execution goes beyond just like the people that happen to be at the beach that day and saw it, right? So one of the things in the video, if you didn't catch it, was that they simulcast this on the largest digital billboards in the country, right? So in the US, it might have been Times Square. So the amplification of this brand action was something that was there. The other thing is, coming from that agency in Dubai, I wonder if it wasn't originally just an idea about, for Muslim women. And then they realized, you know what, this is a big idea. This is probably, and so we have the pregnant woman, the woman who lost a limb. And so I think that the universality of, maybe some of the shame or modesty that some women have about going into the water in a bathing suit kind of plays out. And yeah, I'm a big guy, I'm self-conscious going to the beach and taking off my shirt, and so I mean, I can kind of relate to that. And basically they're saying there's no shame in it. Now, you mentioned early before we started recording that this is kind of similar to Dove in its empowering, and I think it's the same kind of tone, similar message, but in a different category, and one where kind of this idea of the idealized female beauty also exists, right? Like in the swimwear, and in places where you're going to be seen with not a hell of a lot of clothes on. So I think this is a great case. It's a great example of how to develop a case. And, obviously people were moved because this won the Grand Prix in outdoor.
Yeah. Well, the last one that you're going to show us I think resonates especially for us because we did a review of another spot by this particular product in an earlier episode some months ago. So why don't you set this up for us?
Yeah. So this next one was is won a gold lion, and a lot of these won lions in different categories. So when I say that it won here, it's not necessarily the only category they won. I think I picked the highest award that each of these kind of cases got. In this case, this was a gold lion for Heinz Ketchup by Rethink, which is an agency in Toronto. Curiously, Mark Jensen, who was a guest a couple of episodes a week ago recommended a book, which I have and now need to read, called Rethink Creativity by Rethink in Toronto, this agency. And even more curiously, as you mentioned, we did a creative review. I think it might have been the last creative review that we did.
It's been a while.
Yeah. For these out-of-home executions that Heinz did of like taking burgers and hot dogs and different things and putting them in the shape of the shield from the Heinz logo. And we both kind of came to the conclusion, I immediately loved it because I thought it was brilliant, but we came to the conclusion that most consumers didn't recognize or see the Heinz shield. So that said, let's take a look at the case and see what we think after.
You want me to draw ketchup?
Okay.
Ketchup. Draw ketchup.
Sorry, I should draw anything. Food, ketchup, bottle, or something.
I don't think I'm doing this right.
That's not a ketchup bottle. That's a shampoo.
Then I guess a tomato here.
You ready to see the masterpiece?
Heinz?
The Heinz bottle.
I don't even know if I spelled the name right.
You see anything?
Heinz, ketchup
Got a little
bottle.
bit old school.
I don't know. It's like the only ketchup that I know.
It's mustard.
That's mustard.
Yeah.
Okay, Howard. So what do you think now that you've seen the case for draw ketchup?
You know, when I first looked at we didn't do we're not reviewing all of the case studies that you proposed. But when I first looked through all of them and was deciding which ones I was going to say this or that about, this was easily my favorite. But now having seen the Apple demonstration spot for the iPhone 13, that's even now more my favorite after I've watched it. But I did absolutely love this execution for Heinz, because to me it is a perfect explanation of the power of a brand. You know, we say that Kleenex is become a generic for tissues, and
that's a good thing for them.
And it's a very good thing for them. And Heinz is basically the same thing. Heinz is the ketchup. I mean, if you ask me if there's another brand of ketchup, I'd say, yes, I'm sure there is. And I can't think of it off the top of my head. This demonstrated to me perfectly, you know, the difference between branding and marketing. Branding is about, you know, answering the why. Marketing is about how we do it. People have been so ingrained over generations of what this product is that they just know it instinctively. So when you say, draw a picture of ketchup, they draw the only thing they know. And, you know, the only thing that gives it away, I think, is the bright red at the title card at the very beginning, the bright red and the font, which is just as intimately connected to a brand as anything else.
Distinctive assets.
Yeah, consumers may not know that. They may not be able to name those things, but they will recognize them. Just like, you know, British Airways has red, white, and blue, and it has a font and it has certain colors. And people may not recognize the difference between that red, white, and blue and another red, white, and blue from another product. But these are elements. Professionals like you and I, we're going to know this kind of thing. So there are giveaways, but it's just such a simple execution done perfectly. I love it.
So, I was starting to laugh while you were talking because I was thinking, man, the brand manager at Hunt's Ketchup must be on suicide watch.
Well, we would love to have the brand manager at Hunt's as a viewer of the Brief Brothers, and maybe we'll get him as a guest.
Yeah,
he may not show up after this.
So you know, for me, it was interesting because the idea that we reviewed earlier in another episode about kind of a shield is somehow in the same neighborhood with this idea, right? About the ubiquity of Heinz, right? The thing is that it's not ubiquitous enough that people recognize the shield, but they did recognize Heinz as being the leading ketchup to the point that, like, I think the statistic was like 97% of the people that were asked to draw it drew a Heinz bottle in some way, shape, or form. You know, this is also an execution that you know, talks about social behavior, and this is a very shareable thing. Like, it's funny to watch the people drawing it, and you could very easily envision yourself drawing, and I probably would have drawn you know, it's believable. Like, there's a lot of claims that brands make that you're like, oh, give me a break, but you can easily believe yourself if they just told you, hey, draw ketchup, that you would draw a Heinz bottle. So it kind of rings true as a consumer. And so you know, I just thought this was a fun, you know, idea. It's a Gold Lion winner, and I think it's very well deserved.
Yes, I agree. Well, Henry, good stuff.
Good stuff, Howard.
He's Henry Gomez.
And he's Howard Eibach. And together we're the Brief Brothers. Till next time. Bye-bye.